another episode of Dulcimerica. What the heck was that? My name is Futch, and I'm going to take you down to a skill level that everybody can really deal with. This is a fundamental thing, not only for advanced players, but for beginner players as well. There's a saying in band circles that you're only as good as your drummer, and that means, you know, your singer can be awesome, your guitarist, your banjo player, your bass player, all those people can be fantastic. But if your drummer speeds up and slows down, drops beats, is inconsistent, in other words, then people listening to your music, well, if they want to dance, it's kind of like dancing on quicksand. You want something that's consistent, strong, and is a good solid foundation for your music. Well, when we're playing mountain dulcimer, the right hand is the drummer. And so all of your power, all of your rhythm finesse is going to come from the right hand. So one of the things you can do to beef that up is to work on your strum and work on your flat picking. I have a cadence I like to use. This comes way back from my high school days, and it is a series of 4 quarter notes, 8 eighth notes, and 16 16th notes, and just running through those with and without a metronome. I can't see my metronome from here, so maybe we won't even use that right now, but it's always great to work with a metronome and kind of get your inner clock all calibrated. But here's how it goes. You do the 3 measures, one of 4 notes, one of quarter notes, one of 8 notes, and one of 16th notes. And so you'll start off going like this. And repeat that over and over again using a metronome, and then ditch the metronome and trust your inner clock. Now, I always suggest to my students that they start off with the metronome going 69 or 68 beats per minute. This is really, really slow, and the reason for that is it's much harder to play slow than it is to play quickly. We always play quickly because we want to have a good reference for where that next beat should land. And I'll give you a good example of how this works. You're walking down a street next to a white picket fence, and magically a 2x4 appears in your hand. That happens to me all the time. So what do? You just run that board along that fence so it makes a good clattering sound, and you want the clatter to be nice and even, like a playing cards in the spokes of a bicycle wheel. Does anybody still do that anymore? I don't know. Anyway, you want to be nice and consistent, so you walk along next to the fence and you try and keep your rate of speed consistent, so the sound of the clacking of the 2x4 against that white picket fence is consistent as well. Now, what if the slats in the fence weren't this far apart, but they were a block apart? You wouldn't have a good point of reference about how fast or slow you should walk to sound that clack every block at a consistent rate. That's why we speed up, because we want to hear the clacks. We want to get those slats in the fence closer together, so we have a good registration of how fast or slow we need to be to keep everything even. So playing slow can be very difficult and challenging, but the better you are at being patient, waiting for that next beat to fall, the better your sense of timing and rhythm will be. So you want to do something like this. And repeat that 3 measure cycle over and over again. And then work at different speeds. Go slower, go faster. And then put the metronome away and do what I just did, is just trust your inner clock and move things along. It's even more challenging when you're talking in a different tempo than you are playing, and your talking rhythms are different. You want to be sort of unconscious about the whole rhythm thing. You don't want to have to think about it too much. You want to be able to slip into a rhythm, slip into a tempo, and then play and be able to carry on a conversation. You want it to be automatic. Now you'll notice on the quarter notes that I just was strumming outward. But as soon as I brought the 8th notes in, I started using the return trip, and of course with the 16th notes as well. We're going back and forth with an alternating strum direction, much as the same that we would use for individual notes. And this is also a great thing to practice on each string, bass, middle, and melody, is that 4, 8, and 16 note cadence on the individual strings using alternating pick direction like this. And then do the whole thing all over again. Real good practice for flat picking and feeling the registration of the string kicking back against the pick, which I'll just put in a real quick commercial for V-Picks, v-picks.com. I'm using a tremolo pick right now, but I work with Vinny and the gang at V-Picks to develop a pick for Dulcimer players that is a lot sturdier than most picks that people use. And you want a sturdy pick. Nothing less than 0.80 millimeter will do, because you want to be able to feel the kickback of the string. And if you're playing with one of those nylon picks that flops real easy, not only are you getting excessive pick noise, but you're also not feeling as much of the kickback of the string, and that helps you quite a bit when you're flat picking, when you're strumming, to know exactly what you need to be doing with the right hand. So go for 0.80. Look for the Bing picks, light and ultralight. The ultralight is at 0.80. The tremolo picks are branded as mandolin picks. They are 1 millimeter and they are the perfect size. And you can also see it's a pretty big pick. It's about the size of a Herdem pick. That's what a lot of people default to. And Herdems are great, but they're nylon, and after a while the tips of the Herdems will actually curl after they've been washed a few times. And that presents a problem when you're really trying to feel out what's happening between the pick and the string. Quick commercial, that's all said and done. v-picks.com. Go check them out. So we've got this back and forth thing that we're doing. We got our cadence 4, 8, and 16. Now something else that we can use along with these quarter notes, 8 notes, and 16th notes are accents. And accents are simply a way of putting more emphasis on portions of our measure. So in this case, I'll put accents. I'll play it louder on the first beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're just putting a lot more emphasis on that first beat, on the downbeat. Now I'm doing emphasis on 1 and 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that changes the character of what we're doing within the measure with those 4 quarter notes. How about accents on 4 and 1? We can go like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Lots of different combinations we can use. But the most important for creating music that people will want to dance to is accent on the 2 and the 4 like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And what that does is it sets up a groove similar to a kick drum and a snare. Boom, ba, boom, ba, boom, ba, boom, ba. If we were doing this in 4/4 time, you would have the kick on the 1 and 3 and the snare on 2 and 4. If this were 2/4 time, it would be kick, snare, kick, snare, kick, snare. That's the feeling we're going for. But really, it's the snare, the cracking of the snare in that position in the measure that's giving you that necessary feeling of, I gotta move my booty because this is rocking me out. Listen to an album like Bad by Michael Jackson, where oftentimes you don't even hear a kick drum. Oftentimes all you're hearing is whatever is substituting for the snare, whether it's an actual snare or the crack of a whip or something synthetic or a garbage can lid. It's doom, tsh, doom, doom, tsh, doom, tsh. And everything else is kind of down in the mix, but it's that registration of that 2/4 in the mix that really gets a lot of that album hopping. So how do you make that happen on the mountain dulcimer with the right hand while you're playing and fretting? You put the accents while you're playing. So instead of playing, for example, you count the 1, 2, 3, 4 in your head and then give the accents on 2 and 4 like this. And all of a sudden the head starts nodding, the feet start tapping, and you've got yourself a one-man drummer or one-hand drummer on this side, so that any song that you play can be all of a sudden turned into a cool song you might play for a contra dance. Let's take, for example, the Mountain Dulcimer Players' national anthem, Boil Them Cabbage Down. I'll play it with no accents whatsoever, and then I'll put the accents on 2 and 4. And I'll also use a right-hand palm mute, and I'll show you how to do that right after this. So I'll go like this. With accents. Now I did a couple of things there. First, I put the 2/4 in, accents on the 2 and 4 of the measure, and I also, instead of just keeping my fingers down, I kind of bounced them a bit to get staccato out of them. Instead of going like this, I went. So that's a left-hand trick that you can do to shorten phrases and put more punch into your music. The right-hand palm mute is very, very handy for a lot of things. Basically, you want to take the fleshy part of your hand, side of your hand, and lay it right down on top of the bridge so that you don't make a difference. Then roll it forward ever so slightly, and you get this sort of muted, clucky sound. And this is real handy for changing tone and also cutting down sustain a little bit if you want to get some dynamics in your playing. So you can go from this to this. Now, and it's also a great stopping point. You can also use this as a brake pedal for sustain. Just lay it down on the strings and you can get that stopped. Another thing you can do with chops. Chops are the after beats that you'll hear people playing. Guitarists, mandolinists, fiddlers. They use these after beats that are also 2 and 4. One chop, 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 chop. And one way that you can do that is to pick a chord. I'll use a D chord, 2, 3, 4. And you got your fingers on the strings, but they are not pressing down on the fretboard. So if you strum, you're going to get just a thwacking sound, which is percussive in its own right and an awesome thing to have. We'll do 4 quarter notes. Okay. Now I'm going to put the chops of the D chord down on 2 and 4 by pressing down against the fretboard and then lifting them back up again on 1 and 3. So we get this. So I'm going to strum 4 times and then press my fingers down on the fretboard on 2 and 4. And when you bring those fingers back up, you take them off the fretboard but leave them on the string so they don't sound. And by moving your chords around, you can play now the chop chords to Boiled in Cabbage. Ain't that fun? So if you're in the jam and you don't know the tune, but you are pretty much following the chords along and want to do something other than just strumming chords or arpeggiating through, because no one can really hear that, throw some chops in there because that actually helps everything sound really, really good. One more thing I want to show you, and this is one of my favorite things to do. It's called selective strumming. The melody string, for the most time, is carrying the melody, although you can bring the melody over to the middle string or the bass string. But for the most part, when we're playing drone melody, we're using that melody string to carry the important part of the tune, which is the hummable part, the melody. Oftentimes we strum all the way across all of the strings, and that adds rhythm to the melody. And it destroys the melody, for example. So let's go back to Boiled In Cabbage Down for a second. You really should be thinking about playing one note and then strumming once per note. So in the case of Boiled In Cabbage, it's boil them cabbage down, boys, turn them hoe cakes round. The only song that I can sing is boiled in cabbage down, boys. So your strum should be like this. That's all very well and good, but if you want to throw some additional stuff in there, some fill-in rhythms, how do you work that without taking away from the rhythm already established by the melody? Well, you focus on throwing your extra fill-in strums on the bass string and on the middle string. So you can leave that melody string alone to sustain the notes. And my rule of thumb is whenever you see a clear note in the music, a half note, a dotted half note, notes that are tied together that extend beyond the measure, that's where the melody has sustained. It's extending out and breathing. And you don't want to cut that up too much. So you want to do all of your extra stuff on your support strings, your bass string, and your middle string, like this. I'll show you another example of where, because what people will do, and I have nothing against the bum diddy strum, except as a cure-all for I'm not sure exactly what I should be playing rhythmically. And so if you bum diddy your way all through a tune, that particular song may not match up well with the bum diddy strum, and what you have is a mess, basically. People will just kind of go, it's killing me just to do that. But if you just focus on the melody will tell you how much you should be strumming. And when that melody comes to a stop, it's up to you then to find a creative way to keep things moving along. Another good example is Norwegian Wood by the Beatles. I'm going to strum all the way across the strings with this particular strum I'm using. And let's see what you think about that versus how I do it with this method of letting the melody string chill out and do its thing, and putting all of your extra rhythm on the bass and on the middle string. Here we go. Now this way. So out of those two examples, which one to you sounded more like the record? Which one of those was the melody clearer and you're more able to hear what's going on? That's all because you're letting the melody string do its job. And you may notice on that particular tune that I actually went across the strings to pick up more melody for the Norwegian Wood line. And in that case, I stopped strumming altogether and flat picked those notes into becoming, and then it came right on back to strumming. So you can use a mixture of different techniques, but by no means should you ever just have to use one strum for an entire song. Songs are living, breathing, dynamic things, and your right hand should also be the same way. Thank you for tuning in, and I would like to give a big shout out right now to one of my Patreon patrons. His name is Jeffrey Hamilton, and I just want to thank you, Jeffrey, for your support of my music and of my campaign for Dulcimerica, for the albums I'm producing right now. It's been very, very awesome and very, very helpful. For those of you wondering about what the heck this whole thing is about, you can go to Patreon, patreon.com/BingFutch, and all you have to do is pledge $1 or more per upload, and you can get all kinds of free stuff. My entire CD collection on MP3, the entire Mountain Dulcimer in the Band book series with CD, an 86-page tablature book, my new album, and I don't want to make it too timely right now because by the time that 5 years goes by, people will be like, oh, but there was so much more going on. So to find out the current thing, go to patreon.com/BingFutch. And once again, thanks to everybody who tunes in, and thank you for all of your cards, your letters, your emails, and gifts for Rita. Until next time, this is Bing Futch saying, we'll see ya.